Before diving into this incredible story, consider subscribing to the channel and hitting the bell. Every story here has something to say, and you won't want to miss a single one. The restaurant shimmered with golden lights and crystal, a reflection of the luxury and power concentrated within. Waiters busied themselves between tables like parts of a perfectly oiled mechanism, while diners savored their delicacies, often ignoring those serving them. At the back of the room, a young girl, no older than 12, timidly watched the customers come and go. Her slender hands clutched an antique violin, a precious heirloom passed down from her grandfather. She had just arrived with her mother, a waitress from the restaurant, who had come after school to help support their modest household. At a nearby table, the CEO, an arrogant and self-assured man, was openly mocking everyone around him. Seeing her, he pointed at her and said with a mocking smile, "And you, little one, why don't you show us your talent? Play something for us, I'd like to see if you're worth our attention." The room, accustomed to the whims of the powerful man, wasn't expecting anything special. But when the young woman placed her violin under her chin and began to play, the melody that rose up moved everyone in the room. The notes were pure, deep, charged with emotion and truth. Even the CEO, in control of all his gestures, remained frozen, unable to utter a word. That evening, in that luxury restaurant, a simple joke had awakened a hidden talent, and a lesson in dignity and respect was about to shake up the established order. The five-star restaurant buzzed with hushed conversations, the clinking of silverware, and the discreet clinking of crystal glasses. Waiters glided between tables with precision, mastering the delicate art of discretion, while guests enjoyed the luxury without ever truly noticing the invisible effort surrounding them. In a corner of the room, near the large bay windows overlooking the illuminated city, CEO Harold Wentworth, a man in his 50s in an impeccable suit, surveyed the room with a condescending smile. He was used to getting what he wanted, and tonight, his cruel amusement was directed at a young girl, Lily, his waitress's daughter, timidly holding her violin. "Well," he said, pointing at the girl with a theatrical gesture, "why don't you show us what you can do? I'm sure everyone here will be delighted, or at least entertained." The girl looked down, blushing. Her violin felt like it weighed a ton in her arms, but she took a deep breath and stepped forward. Each step felt like a small victory over the fear that gripped her. She placed her instrument under her chin and closed her eyes. Then she played. The first notes, fragile and hesitant, gave way to a melody of incredible purity. Each vibration seemed to touch the souls of the guests. The murmurs died away, the cutlery fell silently onto the white tablecloths, and the entire restaurant held its breath. Harold Wentworth, expecting a mediocre performance that he might mock, stood frozen. His eyes, incredulous, followed Lily's nimble fingers on the strings. His mouth opened, then closed, unable to form a word. He had wanted to be amused at her expense, but it was he who had just been disarmed by the beauty and strength of the child's talent. At the end of the play, an impressive silence reigned for a few seconds before the entire room burst into spontaneous applause. Lily, flushed but proud, bowed her head at the unexpected recognition. Her mother, moved to tears, felt a wave of pride wash over her. Harold Wentworth, for his part, looked away, unable to bear the implicit lesson. He had just learned, in a few minutes, that arrogance had no hold over true greatness. That night, Lily had lit a spark that would not be extinguished. And somewhere, beneath the luxury and the glittering lights, an affront had just been avenged, silently but brilliantly. The next morning, the restaurant seemed normal to the busy customers, but behind the scenes, the atmosphere was quite different. News of Lily's performance had spread faster than expected. Some customers who had witnessed the scene were still murmuring about the girl and how she had silenced CEO Harold Wentworth. In the kitchen, Lily's mother, Sarah, served the food with a mixture of pride and concern. She knew her child had shown extraordinary talent that night, but she dreaded Wentworth's reaction. The man had never tolerated being left behind, and he was known for his unpredictable tempers. In his private office, Wentworth was flushed with shame. His assistants clumsily tried to reassure him. "Sir, he's just a child." "No," he exclaimed. "You don't understand. This is a public humiliation. The daughter of that waitress made a fool of my entire table. He pounded his fist on his desk, a rare gesture that revealed his agitation. The situation troubled him far more than he cared to admit. He knew he couldn't let this affront go. And somewhere inside him, an unexpected curiosity began to sprout. Meanwhile, Lily sat in her room, reliving the scene in her head. She didn't fully understand the impact she had had, but she felt immense pride. Her mother entered, a tender smile on her lips. "You were incredible last night, my dear. Don't be afraid, no matter what this gentleman says. You showed the truth with your talent." Lily smiled shyly, her eyes shining. She knew something had changed. Fear had given way to confidence, and she was ready to face the consequences. Outside the restaurant, Wentworth made a decision. He wanted to meet the girl and her talent up close, not to mock her, but to understand what had just happened. A direct confrontation was about to take place, and neither side knew yet that this encounter would mark the beginning of an unforgettable life lesson, mixing humility, respect, and unexpected revelations. Fate had just placed its first pieces on the chessboard, and no one could yet imagine how Lily and her mother would, with courage and dignity, overthrow the established order in this world of power and arrogance. That evening, Harold Wentworth stood at the entrance to the restaurant, his face set and his hands clutching his briefcase. He had never come here for anything other than his meals and entertainment, but tonight he wanted to understand what had happened the night before. He wanted to see with his own eyes this girl who had dared to challenge him with her violin. Lily's mother, Sarah, was working the front of the house, serving customers with her usual professionalism. She had heard of the CEO's presence and felt a familiar tension rising within her. She knew Wentworth could be cruel and arrogant, but she was no longer afraid. Yesterday, her daughter had proven that even in this world of luxury and power, dignity and talent could not be crushed. Wentworth approached the table where Lily was sitting, his scrutinizing gaze fixed on the child. "So, it's you," he murmured with a mixture of curiosity and anger. "I must admit, I wasn't expecting this." Lily looked up calmly and answered confidently. "I don't play to amuse others, sir. I play because it's what I do best." The CEO, struck by her courage and poise, was speechless for a moment. The entire room, aware of the tension, held its breath. Wentworth expected her to lower her eyes or tremble, but instead, she looked straight into his eyes, serene and confident. A slight smile appeared on Wentworth's face, a different smile, less arrogant, more intrigued. "Very well, show me again." Lily nodded, put down her violin, and began to play a new melody, deeper and more emotional than the previous one. The notes flowed with grace and power, each chord striking a chord in the CEO. He could no longer deny the talent and strength of this child. When she finished, a respectful silence fell before the entire room erupted in applause. Wentworth reluctantly bowed slightly, a discreet but significant gesture. He had just learned his first lesson: true authority lies not in money or power, but in talent, courage, and dignity. Sarah, moved to tears, approached her daughter and whispered, "You did more than play the violin, you showed the whole world who we are." Wentworth left the room, thoughtful. For the first time, he felt put in his place, not humiliated by a superior, but confronted with something he could neither buy nor control, the respect and talent of a young girl who feared nothing and no one. This confrontation was only the beginning. An unexpected affront had just become the starting point of a life lesson that would transform the perception of Wentworth and everyone around him. The next morning, the restaurant was busier than ever. News of Lily's performance had spread throughout the city. Customers, journalists, and food critics alike were talking about the child prodigy who had silenced Harold Wentworth, the arrogant CEO. Wentworth, true to his character, could not bear to see his humiliation continue to circulate. He called a meeting with his assistants. "This has to stop," he said, his face red with frustration. "We're going to organize something to show who's really in charge here." Meanwhile, Sarah was preparing Lily for a private rehearsal. But she knew she had to be careful. Wentworth was unpredictable and could use his influence to intimidate the girl or herself. "Listen to me, darling," she said, taking her daughter in her arms. What we showed yesterday is already a victory. Whatever happens, don't let anyone make you feel less than you are. That afternoon, Wentworth brought photographers and a small group of VIP clients to witness what he intended to present as a controlled show, hoping to regain control of the situation. Lily and her mother were invited to come and perform again, but this time, the CEO's intention was clear: to turn the child's talent into an object of entertainment for his ego. As Lily sat down, Wentworth said with a smirk, "All right, show me what you've got, and make sure it lives up to everyone's expectations here." Lily took a deep breath, closed her eyes, and began to play. But this time, she didn't just repeat the previous melody. Every note told a story, every chord expressed the trampled dignity, courage in the face of arrogance, and the pride of a mother and daughter. The entire room, including the VIP clients and Wentworth's assistants, was captivated. Some stood up, impressed by the emotion and power of the performance. Wentworth, increasingly disconcerted, felt his control slipping away. His attempt at manipulation had failed. Instead of ridiculing Lily, he had just exposed his own arrogance and inability to understand true greatness. At the end, a respectful silence fell, before loud applause erupted throughout the room. Wentworth looked away, unable to speak. For the first time, he understood that true influence came not from title or money, but from sincerity, talent, and the courage of a pure heart. Sarah took her daughter's hand and whispered, "We owe nothing to anyone, our dignity is our greatest wealth." And in this luxury restaurant, an affront that could have crushed a young girl and her mother had turned into a masterclass for everyone, and especially for Harold Wentworth. A few days after the incident, the restaurant was abuzz. The whole town was talking about Lily, the girl who had silenced the most arrogant CEO in the region. Critics and journalists flocked, some to applaud the child's talent, others to closely observe Wentworth's reaction. That morning, Wentworth entered the restaurant with an unusual attitude. His usual arrogance had been replaced by a certain caution, even genuine curiosity. He looked around the room, saw Lily setting up her violin, and felt a hint of respect mixed with his embarrassment. He walked towards her, this time without mockery. "Lily," he said softly. I want to congratulate you. Yesterday, I was surprised. You play with a talent that I can only admire." Lily looked up, a slight smile on her lips. "Thank you, sir. But I don't play to impress. I play because it's what I do best." Wentworth nodded, aware that his attempts at control and intimidation had failed. And as he was about to leave, a murmur ran through the room. Journalists, previously discreet, had recognized the scene from the day before and were taking photos, capturing the encounter between the CEO and the child who had overturned his arrogance. One of the journalists asked, "Mr. Wentworth, what do you think of this young girl's talent and her courage?" Wentworth felt the pressure. For a moment, he considered deflecting the question, but something inside him had changed. He took a deep breath and answered sincerely, I'm impressed. What this young woman has shown is beyond what I could have imagined. Her talent and dignity have taught me an important lesson: respect cannot be bought." The room erupted in applause. Sarah, moved, felt a wave of relief and pride. Lily, proud but humble, continued to play, each note resonating as an affirmation of their strength and dignity. Wentworth, for the first time, felt that he could no longer control the situation through money or authority. He had just received a public and memorable lesson, and he knew that he would have to rethink his way of seeing the world and the people around him. This unexpected but sincere recognition marked the beginning of a new dynamic. Lily and her mother had not only proven their worth, but they had also opened the eyes of a man accustomed to controlling everything. And in Wentworth's heart, a subtle but real change was beginning to dawn. The days that followed were strangely quiet for the restaurant. The regular customers continued to arrive, but the atmosphere had changed. Respect and admiration for Lily and her mother were evident in every look. The little girl, meanwhile, had returned to her routine, playing every day in the restaurant to the delight and wonder of the diners. Wentworth, however, could no longer ignore what he had experienced. The arrogance that had defined him for years seemed to be crumbling little by little. In his study, he reflected at length on his mistakes. For the first time, he considered acting with humility rather than dominance. That morning, he made a decision. He summoned Sarah to his office, not to mock her, but to make her a sincere proposal. "Sarah," he said in an unusual voice, "I wish to apologize for my behavior. I was unfair to you and your daughter. And I would like to make amends for that." Sarah, suspicious but attentive, looked at him. "Mr. Wentworth," she said calmly, "I'm not seeking your approval. But I'm listening to you. Wentworth continua. I want to fund a series of concerts for Lily. She deserves to have her talent known and celebrated. And I would like you to be involved in this whole project." Sarah felt her heart race. It was unexpected, almost too good to be true, but the sincerity in Wentworth's eyes was real. She took a deep breath. "Very well, Mr. Wentworth. But on one condition, this project must be for her, and for other children who don't have the same opportunities as Lily." Wentworth nodded. "It's understood." Back in the restaurant, Sarah told Lily the news. The girl's eyes shone with excitement and pride. Together, they had not only faced down arrogance and spite, but they had also triggered a real change in the heart of a man who seemed invincible. For the first time, Wentworth understood that power lay not in control or fear, but in respect, empathy, and recognition of the talent and dignity of others. And as Lily's music continued to resonate through the restaurant, a new feeling took hold, that sometimes true strength is found in the courage and purity of an innocent heart. A few weeks later, Lily's first concert was held in a small concert hall in the city, financed and supported by Harold Wentworth. The event had been quietly announced, but word of mouth had spread. Families, journalists, and even influential patrons had come to see the young prodigy perform. Sarah accompanied Lily on stage, proud and moved. The little girl picked up her violin, took a deep breath, and began to play. The notes rose, more powerful than ever, carried by emotions that only those who have experienced injustice and perseverance could understand. Wentworth sat in the room, watching in silence. Each chord seemed to touch something within him he'd never felt before. His usual domineering CEO posture was gone, replaced by sincere, silent admiration. For the first time, he was witnessing true greatness he could neither control nor dominate. The entire town seemed to hold its breath. The applause at the end of the performance was deafening, and the journalists present took notes, capturing the story of the young girl who had shaken arrogance and inspired respect. Wentworth, unable to speak, bowed slightly toward Lily, a discreet but deeply respectful gesture. After the concert, he approached Sarah and said with rare honesty, "You and your daughter taught me a lesson I will never forget. Thank you for opening my eyes." Sarah smiled, feeling the circle of fear and humiliation finally broken. "It wasn't us who changed the world," she said softly. "It was music, and the truth." Lily, for her part, was beginning to understand the power her talent could have, not to intimidate or humiliate, but to uplift, inspire, and transform hearts, even those that seemed most closed. The town, touched by the performance, began to see Sarah and Lily in a new light, no longer as simple mother and daughter, but as symbols of courage, talent, and dignity. Wentworth, for his part, would never again be the same arrogant and domineering man he had been. And as the lights in the room dimmed and the applause continued, Lily knew one thing: her music now had the power to change lives, and nothing could ever stop it. In the following weeks, Lily's reputation grew far beyond the restaurant and local concerts. The city's media picked up the story of this young prodigy who had not only captivated audiences with her talent, but also put one of the most powerful men in the region back in power. Articles described her courage, her discipline, and the quiet strength of Sarah, her mother. Wentworth, for his part, could no longer ignore Lily's impact. He participated in several interviews, this time not to assert his authority, but to support the child's talent and her message. "Lily reminds us that true power doesn't lie in titles or money," he told the cameras. "It lies in courage, talent, and dignity." Sarah, touched by this transformation, saw her daily life change. Customers looked at her with respect, some came to congratulate her for raising such an exceptional daughter. But she remained humble and vigilant, aware that Lily's true worth was not measured in applause or media coverage, but in the consistency of her work and the purity of her art. Lily, meanwhile, was increasingly in demand for concerts, charity events, and musical collaborations. Each performance was a new opportunity to convey a message of courage and perseverance, and she did so with a natural grace that impressed everyone who listened. Wentworth became her unlikely mentor. Far from his initial arrogance, he supported Lily's choices and sought to help her expand her fame, but always respecting her freedom and integrity. Their relationship became a symbol. Even the most powerful can change when they encounter the truth and greatness of a pure heart. One evening, after a particularly successful concert, Sarah watched her daughter surrounded by fans and journalists. She felt an immense pride and a sense of security. Lily was no longer just their secret, their hidden treasure. She had become a force capable of inspiring the entire city. And in the shadows, Wentworth smiled, aware that this experience had not only changed his perception of the world, but had also sown the seeds of a more just and respectful future for all those who dared to dream and persevere. The autumn wind swept through the illuminated city streets as a grand event was being held in the municipal theater. That evening, Lily was scheduled to perform in front of hundreds of spectators, including officials, patrons, and journalists from all over the region. The atmosphere was electrifying, and the young prodigy's reputation had spread beyond all local borders. Sarah walked Lily backstage, giving her one last hug. "Remember, my darling," she said softly, "tonight you are playing for yourself and for all those who believe in their dreams." Wentworth, sitting in the front row, watched the scene with an emotion he had never known. His arrogance had been replaced by a deep and sincere respect. He was no longer the arrogant master of old, but an ally, aware of the importance of supporting talent and dignity. When Lily placed her violin under her chin and the first notes rose, the audience was immediately captivated. Each melody told a story of courage, perseverance, and triumph over arrogance and injustice. Audiences young and old were moved by the intensity and maturity of Lily's playing. At the end of the performance, thunderous applause erupted. People stood, some with tears in their eyes, admiring not only the child's talent, but the inner strength she embodied. Wentworth stood in turn, bowing slightly towards Lily as a sign of respect and gratitude. A reporter approached Wentworth and asked, "How do you explain this radical change, Mr. Wentworth?" He, with a sincere smile, replied, "I learned a lesson that no amount of wealth or authority could ever teach me. True power lies in courage, talent, and dignity. Lily and her mother showed me what it truly means to respect and value others." Sarah took her daughter's hand and whispered, "Look, darling, you transformed more than a stage tonight. You touched hearts and changed lives." Lily smiled, aware that every note she played now had an impact far beyond music. It was no longer just an art, it was an instrument of justice, dignity, and inspiration. That night, the entire town celebrated not only a young prodigy, but also the victory of humility and respect over arrogance and power. Wentworth, transformed, knew he would never go back. Lily's lesson would remain etched in his memory forever. A few months later, Lily was no longer just a young prodigy playing in restaurants and small concerts around town. Her talent had found national recognition. Invitations poured in for festivals, television shows, and charity events. She now embodied the power of perseverance and dignity, proving that no amount of arrogance or injustice could hold back true talent. Sarah, her mother, continued to watch over her with love and vigilance. She had learned that true education lay not only in music lessons, but in facing the world with courage, humility, and integrity. Harold Wentworth, for his part, had completely changed. The arrogant and domineering man he had once been was gone. He had become a sincere mentor, an ally, and an example of the transformation that can be achieved when one is willing to acknowledge one's mistakes and learn from others, even the youngest. He supported Lily in all her endeavors, but always with respect and without ever seeking to claim her success as his own. At a special ceremony held by the city to honor Lily's talent and resilience, Wentworth addressed the crowd. "Today, I am here to publicly acknowledge that true power comes not from money, title, or authority, but from courage, perseverance, and dignity. Lily and her mother showed me what it means to respect and value others, and for that I will be eternally grateful." The crowd applauded warmly. Lily, standing beside her mother, felt a wave of emotion wash over her. All the hardship, all the humiliation and arrogance she'd faced, had led to this moment of triumph. Sarah took her daughter's hand and whispered, "Look, my dear, you've changed the world around you, simply by staying true to yourself." Lily smiled, her heart filled with pride and gratitude. She knew it wasn't just the music that made the difference, but the strength of her courage and the rightness of her actions. That evening, as the city lights twinkled in the distance, Lily and Sarah understood that the true victory was not one of talent, but of dignity and respect, a triumph that could transform even the most closed hearts. And in the audience, Wentworth sat humbly, watching these two women who had changed his life forever. For the first time, he understood what it meant to be truly great.